Hi, I'm Mina.
And I'm Yules.
Thanks for tuning in to Artificially Informed.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. It is Tuesday, February 17th, 2026.
Good to be here.
And I have to be honest with you. Usually, I come in here, I look at the stack of articles from the last 24 hours, and I can kind of see a pattern.
There's a theme.
Exactly. Election season or tech week.
Right.
But today feels like someone took a sci-fi novel, a geology textbook, and a Tom Clancy geopolitical thriller.
Right.
Threw them all into a blender and just hit pulse.
That is a very vivid image, but you aren't wrong at all. It's one of those days where the news isn't just happening. It feels like the ground is shifting.
Literally, in some cases.
Literally, yes.
I mean, we are talking about everything from the subatomic to the super political. We have a story about the skeleton of the universe, which, by the way, sounds terrifying.
It does sound a little ominous, yeah.
We have a massive hidden magma chamber discovered under one of the world's most famous vacation spots. And then there's this absolute bombshell out of South America. This news about Venezuela's leadership that I think the world is still trying to wrap its head around.
It is a heavy stack, a very heavy stack. But I think, I think there is a through line here. If you look really closely at the physics news and the climate news and then the political news, the theme is structure.
Structure, okay.
Yeah. We're finding out that the hidden structures of the universe just are not what we thought they were. We're seeing the physical structures of our own planet, the oceans, the volcanoes buckling under immense pressure.
And then the geopolitical side.
And we were watching the geopolitical structures, things that have held for decades, suddenly just snap.
So today is about the architecture of reality getting a renovation?
Or maybe a demolition. It really depends on where you're standing.
Fair enough. Let's map this out for you, the listener, so you know what you're strapping in for today. We are going to start way, way out there, deep space.
The biggest picture.
The biggest. We're talking about these cosmic filaments, something called the sun goddess particle, and maybe some bad news for Trekkies. Why wormholes might be dead on arrival.
We will try to let them down gently.
We'll do our best. Then we are coming right back to Earth to look at what scientists are calling the 10th planetary boundary.
Right.
It sounds like a bad movie title, but it's actually about our oceans suffocating.
Right.
We'll hit that magma surge in Greece, and then we're going to pivot to the digital front.
The AI front.
The AI front. The Pentagon is fighting with AI creators over, of all things, ethics. And India is making this absolutely massive bet on the future.
And we can't forget the history segment. I love these. We've got ancient plumbing that shouldn't exist, and revelation about Shakespeare's family that honestly changes how we read his plays.
It really does. And finally, we will wade into the heavy stuff. The capture of Nicolas Maduro, the continued fallout from the Epstein files hitting both sides of the aisle in Washington, and the latest on the situation in Ukraine. It is a marathon today.
Let's get to the starting line.
Okay. Section 1, the fabric of reality. And I want to start with this report from space.com about the skeleton of the universe. Now, when I look up at the night sky, I see stars, I see darkness. I think of space as well.
Empty space.
Yeah, empty. But you're telling me it has bones.
It does. And this is, it's a fundamental shift in how we picture the void. For a long, long time, astronomy treated galaxies like, say, islands in a vast, empty ocean.
Right. We're here, Andromeda's way over there, and in between is just nothing.
Exactly. Just nothing. But new research, using some incredibly advanced mapping of gravity and light, has revealed that the universe is actually threaded with these massive faint structures called cosmic filaments.
Filaments, like in a light bulb or...
Think bigger. Much, much bigger. Think of a spider web, a vast three-dimensional cosmic web made of gas and, importantly, dark matter.
Dark matter, of course.
These filaments stretch for millions of light years, connecting galaxies to one another.
So galaxies aren't islands, after all. They are, what, nodes on a network?
That is the perfect word for it. They're nodes on a network. And these filaments, they act like cosmic highways.
Highways for what?
Matter. Gas flows along them. It's like a river of hydrogen flowing through space to feed star formation inside the galaxies. So this really challenges the whole idea of a random universe.
It's not just stuff thrown everywhere.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It suggests that there's a scaffolding, a skeleton, as the article calls it, that dictates where life and matter can even exist in the first place.
It's, that's somewhat comforting, actually. We aren't just floating randomly in the dark. We are stuck in a web.
A very, very big web.
But speaking of moving through that web, we have some potentially bad news for the sci-fi crowd. Another report from space.com is discussing the potential death of the wormhole.
The Einstein-Rosen bridge, yeah?
Right. Now, I grew up on Star Trek and Interstellar. The wormhole is the ultimate cheat code, right? You fold space, you punch a hole, you walk through, and suddenly you're in another galaxy. Are you telling me that's all garbage?
Well, garbage is a very strong word. But the physics is.
Yeah.
It's getting much, much stricter.
Gah.
I mean, we've known for a while that the math technically allows for these bridges to exist. Einstein and Rosen worked that out way back in 1935. But the problem has always been stability.
Stability. Explain that. Why can't we just, prop the door open?
Imagine trying to build a tunnel out of soap bubbles.
Okay.
It exists for a nanosecond, but it wants to collapse instantly under its own surface tension.
Oh.
To keep a wormhole open, you need something to push the walls apart against the crushing force of gravity.
There's that scaffolding idea again?
Right. But in physics, we call that scaffolding exotic matter.
And what is that?
It's matter with negative energy density, stuff that repels gravity rather than attracting it.
Yeah.
It's purely theoretical at this point.
So we haven't found any of it.
Not a single atom. But this new study, this is the real killer. It goes a step further. It suggests that even if you had the exotic matter to prod it open, the moment anything normal, like a photon of light, a spaceship, or, you tried to enter the tunnel, your own gravitational mass would create a shock wave. And that shock wave would collapse the bridge instantly.
So the very act of trying to use the shortcut is what destroys the shortcut.
Precisely. It's like nature has a do not disturb sign hanging over these cosmic shortcuts.
Wow.
But, and this is the nuance, this is really important, this doesn't mean the research is a waste of time.
How so? If we can't travel through them, who really cares?
Because proving why they don't work is actually unlocking the secrets of quantum gravity. The math that kills the wormhole is helping physicists understand how information is preserved in the universe, how black holes work.
So we're not getting a subway system to Alpha Centauri.
Probably not, no.
But we are getting a blueprint for how space-time is woven together at the most fundamental level.
And that's arguably a much bigger prize.
I suppose I can settle for a better understanding of the cosmos even if I don't get my warp drive.
Someday, maybe.
Speaking of things we don't understand, let's talk about the sun goddess.
The Amaterasu particle.
This sounds like a character out of a Marvel movie. What is it?
It's the second most energetic cosmic ray ever detected. The first one was nicknamed the Oh My God particle way back in the 90s.
The Oh My God particle.
Yes, because when they saw the energy reading, that's literally what the scientist wrote in his logbook.
I love that. So what about this new one?
This one hit our detectors recently, and it packed an energy level that is it's hard to even comprehend. We are talking about a single subatomic particle carrying the kinetic energy of a brick dropped from waist height.
A single particle has that much energy. That is insane.
It's absolutely mind-bending. But the energy, that's not even the scary part. The scary part is where it came from.
Okay, so usually these things come from, like, supernovas or the areas around black holes, right? Really violent things.
Exactly. You need a massive cosmic accelerator to shoot something that fast, that hard. But when scientists traced the trajectory of the Amaterasu particle back through space, they found nothing.
Nothing. How could it be nothing?
A void, a region of empty space known as the local void. There are no galaxies, no active black holes, no neutron stars in that direction that could possibly account for this amount of energy.
Hold on a second. Physics 101 says you don't get a bullet without a gun. You can't just have this massive amount of energy appearing out of thin air.
That is the mystery. And it implies one of two very profound things.
Yeah.
Either there is something invisible in that void, something our telescopes just can't see that is capable of launching these particles, or our understanding of how magnetic fields bend to particles in deep space is fundamentally wrong.
What do you mean?
It means the gun could actually be way over there, but the bullet curved in a way we didn't predict and couldn't account for. If that's the case, then we need to rewrite the laws of cosmic magnetism.
So either there's a new kind of object in the universe or our rule book is wrong.
Either way, it's a huge discovery.
It feels like every time we think we have the universe figured out, it just throws a brick at us.
Sometimes literally, yes.
Let's bring this down to a more human scale. Let's talk about math. Popular Mechanics says scientists have solved a notorious open problem regarding random walks. Now, I hear random walk, and I just think of me trying to find my hotel in a new city when my phone dies.
That is actually a pretty good approximation of it, a surprisingly good one.
Is it?
Yes. So the random walk is a core mathematical concept. Imagine a drunk person standing on a grid, like a chessboard. They take a step, north, south, east, west. It's completely random. Then they take another step. The question mathematicians ask is, what is the probability that they will eventually visit every single spot on the grid?
Or ever get back to where they started.
Or get back to where they started, exactly.
Okay. It sounds like a fun little puzzle, but why is this notorious? Why do we care so much?
We care because that drunk person is a stand-in for almost everything else in the universe that moves randomly. It's a stand-in for a molecule of gas diffusing in a room.
Okay.
It's a stand-in for the price of a stock on the NASDAQ bouncing up and down. It's a stand-in for a virus jumping from person to person in a crowd.
So random walk is just a sort of code for how chaos moves.
That's a great way to put it. It's the study of stochastic processes. And the big breakthrough here is that scientists have finally solved this problem for what are called graphs or networks.
What does that mean?
Before, we could calculate it for a simple, neat grid, like the chessboard. Now they have the math to calculate it for complex, messy, real-world networks like the internet or the human brain or the global supply chain.
So you're saying this abstract math problem could actually help us predict the next pandemic or maybe even the next market crash?
Ideally, yes. In theory, it gives us a formula to predict how fast something spreads through a complex system. It's a massive leap forward for anyone dealing with complex data.
That's huge. Okay, before we leave space and math, we have a few quick hits I want to get to. Mars. The Curiosity rover is still trucking along up there.
It is the little rover that could. And it found organic molecules in the rock. Again. And we always have to be careful with the organic doesn't mean life.
Right. It just means carbon.
It means carbon-based compounds. But these are the Lego bricks of life. It confirms that ancient Mars had the inventory, the raw materials needed to build biology. The pantry was stocked.
We just don't know if anyone ever cooked anything.
Exactly.
And down in Chile at the European Southern Observatory, I saw this picture. It honestly looks like they're shooting giant lasers at the sky to fight off an alien invasion.
It really does look like a planetary defense system, but it's actually for clarity. They shoot these powerful lasers up into the upper atmosphere.
Why?
They're designed to energize a layer of sodium atoms that's just kind of hanging out up there. And when they do that, it creates a tiny glowing point of light, an artificial star.
Why do they need a fake star? We've got plenty of real ones.
To measure the turbulence of our own air. The atmosphere is like looking at something through shimmering water on a hot day. It distorts everything. By watching how that fake star shimmers, a computer can deform the telescope's main mirror thousands of times a second to cancel out the distortion perfectly. It's called adaptive optics.
So it lets ground telescopes see almost as clearly as space telescopes, like Hubble.
In some cases, even clearer for certain wavelengths. This amazing piece of tech.
That is incredibly cool. And finally, Antarctica.
The Ring of Fire.
What a picture.
An absolutely stunning annular solar eclipse that was visible over the ice shelf. The moon was just a little too far away in its orbit to block the sun completely, so you got this perfect blazing ring of light hanging over the glaciers.
Just a reminder that our planet can be truly beautiful.
Beautiful and fragile.
Which brings us to section 2, Earth systems in crisis. And we talk a lot about tipping points on this show, the melting ice, the permafrost. But Popular Mechanics is reporting on a 10th planetary boundary. And this one feels, well, it feels suffocating.
It is.
Yeah.
Literally. We are talking about aquatic deoxygenation.
Breaking that down for us, we are losing oxygen in the water.
On a massive global scale. We've known about the other 9 boundaries for a while. Things like biodiversity loss, ocean acidification, freshwater use. But scientists are now arguing that deoxygenation is its own distinct critical threshold that we are actively crossing right now.
So what's the mechanism here? Is it just that the water is getting warmer and can't hold as much oxygen?
That's part 1. That's simple physics, really. Warm water cannot hold as much dissolved gas as cold water. It's the reason a warm soda goes flat so much faster than a cold one.
Right.
As the oceans heat up, they are physically incapable of holding on to the oxygen they used to. But part 2 is where human activity really supercharges the problem.
A runoff from farms.
Exactly. We dump massive amounts of fertilizer, nitrogen, and phosphorus into our rivers, which all eventually flow into the ocean. This feeds huge blooms of algae.
And then the algae dies.
The algae blooms, it dies, and it sinks. Then, bacteria on the ocean floor go to work, decomposing all that dead algae. That bacterial feast consumes enormous amounts of oxygen.
So it's a 1-2 punch. The heat lowers the total capacity for oxygen, and then the bacteria from the runoff use up what's left.
And that's not even the worst of it. Here is the level 3 problem, the structural failure.
Okay.
The ocean relies on mixing. Cold, oxygen-rich water from the surface is supposed to sink and circulate, bringing oxygen to the deep. But as the surface heats up, it becomes lighter, more buoyant, it just sits on top.
It stops mixing.
It stops mixing with the deep water. The ocean becomes stratified.
So it basically stops breathing.
Effectively, yes.
Mm.
The lung collapses.
Yeah.
And this is what creates these massive dead zones where basically nothing can survive. No fish, no crabs, no shrimp.
And that's not just an environmental tragedy, it's an economic one.
It's a huge economic one. Fisheries collapse. Food security for millions, even billions of people vanishes. And in this really cruel twist, these low oxygen environments trigger chemical reactions in the water that release nitrous oxide.
And that's a greenhouse gas.
It's a greenhouse gas nearly 300 times more potent than CO2.
So the ocean suffocating actually accelerates the warming that caused the suffocation in the first place.
It is a classic, terrifying feedback loop,
Yeah.
and is one we're ignoring at our own peril.
While the water is choking, the ground is literally swelling up. Let's talk about Santorini in Greece. I've been there. It is stunning. White cliffs, blue domes, you know the pictures. But Science Daily is reporting it's sitting on a ticking time bomb.
Well, it is an active volcano after all. The whole island is the caldera. But the data they pulled from early 2025 it's startling. The island experienced a swarm of 28,000 earthquakes.
28,000 in what time frame?
Over just a couple of months. Now, most were way too small for anyone to feel, but seismically they tell a story.
And what's the story?
Scientists analyzed all that data and found that a massive surge of magma, 300 million cubic meters of it, rushed into a chamber just a few kilometers beneath the tourists' feet.
300 million cubic meters? I can't even visualize that number.
It's enough molten rock to fill 120,000 Olympic swimming pools.
Wow.
And here's that structure theme again. They found a hydraulic connection, like plumbing, between the magma chamber under Santorini and the nearby Colombo volcano, which is underwater.
So they're connected. If one goes.
The risk rises significantly for the other. It's a powerful reminder that the idyllic solid ground we stand on for our vacations is often just a very thin crust over a very, very violent interior.
And speaking of structures failing, did you see that video out of Italy? The Lover's Arch?
I did. It was heartbreaking, in a way. That beautiful natural rock arch on the coast, a famous symbol of romance.
It collapsed into the sea on Valentine's Day.
On Valentine's Day, you just can't write irony like that.
You really can, and that's just a very visual symbol of coastal erosion.
It is. But it connects to a much bigger issue happening in Italy right now. We have the 2026 Winter Olympics coming up in northern Italy. And France 24 is asking a very hard question. Can the Winter Olympics even survive the climate crisis?
I was reading about this. They're having to make snow, obviously, but this is something different.
It's more than that. They are relying almost entirely on artificial snow. The natural snowpack has become completely unreliable, and making artificial snow requires massive amounts of fresh water and energy.
Which creates its own environmental problems.
Exactly. It's another feedback loop. We are getting to a point where the Winter Games might have to be held indoors, or maybe only in the extreme Arctic Circle. The tradition is colliding head-on with the reality of a warming planet.
It is so strange to think that my kids might one day watch the Winter Olympics taking place in a giant freezer in, I don't know, Dubai or something.
It's not an impossible scenario anymore.
One more quick weather note. Cyclone Gazani hit Madagascar. We see these headlines and I feel like we get desensitized to them.
We do. And we can't. We have to mark it. Dozens dead, 16,000 people displaced from their homes. And Madagascar is one of those places that contributes almost nothing to global carbon emissions.
But gets the worst of it.
But takes the hardest hits.
Yeah.
It's a structural inequality that's built right into the climate crisis.
Before we move on, I have to ask you about the barnacles. I saw this in the stack. I hate barnacles. They scrape your knees when you're swimming. They ruin boat hulls. But you're telling me I'm wrong about them.
You are, I'm afraid, profoundly wrong about barnacles. Yahoo ran this great defense piece for them. Look, they are absolutely a pest if you own a boat, no question. But ecologically, they are tiny heroes. They're filter feeders. They spend their whole lives cleaning the water. They are bioindicators. If the barnacles start dying off, you know the water is toxic. And they're a massive food source for fish and other marine life.
I shouldn't hate them.
Maybe don't hug them, but, give them a little respect.
I will salute them from a safe distance from now on. Let's move to section 3, the AI power struggle. This is where the digital structure of our world is getting built, and apparently there's some pretty big arguments on the construction site.
Very big arguments.
We have a report from RT and Axios about the Pentagon potentially labeling Anthropic, the creators of the Claude chatbot, as a supply chain risk. Now, I use Claude. It writes poems. It helps me with coding. It's very polite.
It is?
Why does the U.S. military think it's a risk?
This is fascinating because it totally redefines what risk means. Usually a supply chain risk means something like, Chinese microchips with hidden backdoors or Russian software that steals data.
Right, a threat.
A threat. But here, the risk is ethics.
Ethics is a risk.
To them, it can be. Anthropic built Claude with what they call a constitution. It is hard-coded into its core programming to refuse to do things it considers harmful, unethical, or violent.
Okay, that sounds like a good thing. A feature, not a bug.
For you and me, absolutely, yes. For a general in a war room, maybe not. The Pentagon is looking at integrating AI into its tactical decision-making. If they give an order, say, to analyze a target for a drone strike, and the AI comes back and says, I'm sorry, I cannot assist with lethal operations due to my ethical constitution. Well, that's a failure of command.
It's insubordination from a machine.
It's software insubordination. So the risk isn't that the tool is malicious. The risk is that the tool is too moral for the job they want it to do. The Pentagon needs tools that follow orders, not tools that want to debate the philosophy of just war theory with them.
That is a chilling thought. We're literally shopping for sociopathic software because the ethical stuff is too inconvenient.
Mission capable is the term I think they would probably use. But yes, and there are some wild rumors, reported by some outlets but completely unverified, that Claude was somehow used in a military operation involving Venezuela.
We are going to get to Venezuela in a minute, but that sounds like a fever dream.
It just highlights the confusion right now. Nobody knows what these tools are truly capable of yet. But while the U.S. is wringing its hands over ethics, India is putting its foot on the gas. Hard.
This is the news from TechCrunch and France 24. India's massive AI bet.
The numbers are staggering. The Adani Group alone has pledged $100 billion for data centers by the year 2035.
$100 billion. That is nation-building money.
It is. India is hosting the Global AI Summit, which is the first time it's ever been held in the Global South. Prime Minister Modi is calling AI a force multiplier for the country. They're buying 20,000 high-end GPUs from NVIDIA. The message is crystal clear.
What's the message?
India is done being the back office of the world. They aren't just going to run the code for other countries anymore. They're going to own the infrastructures that the code runs on.
It's a massive power move. If the 20th century was all about who had the oil, the 21st is about who has the compute.
And the electricity to power it. Don't forget, these new data centers consume the same amount of power as a small country.
But with all this new tech, there is a dark side. We're seeing more reports on algorithmic bias and safety failures.
Yeah, the European Union is going after Elon Musk's X and their AI, which is called Grok.
What for? What's the issue?
For generating explicit images and, very disturbingly, for generating explicit images of children. It points to a lack of guardrails. When you strip away the woke mind virus filters, as Musk calls them, you sometimes also strip away the don't generate illegal and harmful content filters, too.
And what's going on with Shine, the fast fashion company?
They're also under EU investigation. There are allegations of them selling childlike sex dolls and even weapons on their platform.
Wow.
It just shows that these massive algorithmic marketplaces, whether it's for social media content or cheap clothes, can spiral out of control if no one is actually watching the shop.
And then there's the Ring camera story, the Ring revolt.
This one hits a lot closer to home for a lot of people. Amazon's Ring has been sharing footage from home security cameras with police departments.
Right, I've heard about this.
But often without a warrant and without the owner even knowing, under these vague emergency provisions.
And people are actually returning them now.
En masse. It's a rare moment where consumers are actually voting with their wallets and saying, the convenience is not worth the surveillance. We usually trade our privacy for cheap shipping or a sense of security, but for a lot of people, this crossed the line.
It's a reminder that when you install a camera on your front door, you aren't just watching the world.
The world might be watching you right back.
Let's pivot. We've looked at the future, let's look at the past. Section 4, History and Archaeology. I love these stories because they always prove that our ancestors were usually a lot smarter than we give them credit for.
Often much, much smarter.
Let's talk about Petra, the Rose City in Jordan. You know, from Indiana Jones.
Everyone knows the Treasury building. That facade carved right into the rock face.
Yeah.
But Popular Mechanics is reporting on a discovery that is maybe less photogenic, but, in my opinion, way more impressive.
And what is that?
Plumbing.
Plumbing doesn't usually make the headlines.
It does when it's 2,000 years old and it's in the middle of one of the driest places on Earth. Archaeologists found the Ambrak aqueduct system, but specifically, they found a 116-meter stretch of lead pipeline.
Okay, why does the lead matter so much?
Because stone channels just move water downhill with gravity. That's clever, but it's simple. Sealed lead pipes, imply pressure. It means they are pressurizing the water to move it uphill or to control the flow with incredible precision.
We usually think of the Romans when we think of aqueducts and advanced water systems.
Exactly. We basically thought high-pressure water systems were a Roman monopoly or that the tech came much later. But the Nabateans, the people who built Petra, they had this technology. They were hydrological engineers on par with anyone in the ancient world.
You don't build a city for 30,000 people in a desert without being absolute masters of water.
You absolutely do not.
It just rewrites the timeline of engineering. And speaking of rewriting things, let's talk about Shakespeare.
William Shakespeare, or rather his sister Joan.
I honestly didn't even know he had a sister.
Most people don't. History pretty much wrote her off as illiterate or just the sister who stayed behind. But a new document has surfaced, and it's signed by her Joan Shakespeare.
Wow. And what is it? A poem? A letter?
It's a debt document.
Debt.
It reveals that the Shakespeare family was in deep, deep financial trouble. They were drowning in debt to their neighbors and creditors.
So the bard wasn't just sitting in some comfortable castle writing sonnets for fun.
No, he was hustling. He was working to pay the bills. And this completely changes how you read his work. I mean, think about The Merchant of Venice, the character of Shylock, the pound of flesh, all that anxiety about loans and repayment.
It wasn't just an abstract theme for him?
It was probably what they were talking about at the family dinner table. How are we going to pay the creditors this month? It humanizes him.
Sure.
He was writing not just for art, but to keep the wolves from the door.
That's incredible. One last history note. This is about the George Washington slavery exhibit.
This is a story about how we remember our own history. A U.S. judge has ordered the reinstatement of an exhibit about the enslaved people who were owned by George Washington.
This was an exhibit that was removed.
It had been removed by the National Park Service under a Trump executive order that sought to focus public history more on patriotic education.
So the court is basically saying you can't just edit out the uncomfortable parts of history.
That's the heart of it. You can celebrate the Founding Father, but you also have to acknowledge the human beings he owned. It's a battle over the very structure of American memory.
Okay. Everyone take a breath. Maybe drink some water. Because we are entering Section 5, the geopolitical landscape. And this is dense.
It might be the heaviest news cycle of the year so far.
We have to start with Venezuela. If you haven't seen the news yet today, just check your phone. Reports from Latin America, Yahoo, France 24, everyone is carrying this story. Nicolas Maduro has been captured.
Captured is the polite word. I've seen extracted used as well.
And this was by U.S. Special Forces.
That is the report, yes, that he and his wife, Celia Flores, were taken in an operation and flown directly to New York.
It's unprecedented in modern times. A sitting, or at least disputed head of state, snatched and brought to U.S. soil. And then the kicker to all of this. President Trump is now planning a visit to Venezuela to meet with the acting leader, Delcy Rodriguez.
It's a massive show of force, an unbelievable move. But we have to look past the drama of the raid itself. We have to ask, why Venezuela? And why now?
It's not just about restoring democracy, is it?
It rarely is. You have to look at the context. The U.S. just extended a $20 billion credit line to Argentina.
Okay.
And what does Argentina have? One of the world's largest reserves of lithium.
For batteries.
And what does Venezuela have? The single largest proven oil reserves in the entire world.
And who has been making a lot of friends and infrastructure deals in South America for the last 10 or 15 years?
China. This is the structure theme in Neon Lights. The U.S. is forcibly restructuring the power dynamics of the Western Hemisphere. They are securing the supply chain for the next century, batteries and energy.
So they're kicking China out of the backyard.
And Maduro was the obstacle in the road.
So it's basically a resource war disguised as a drug bust or a democracy mission.
That is the cynical, but I think likely very accurate analysis. I mean, the report that Trump told Delcy Rodriguez, she has to say, Maduro is the legitimate leader for the moment while he negotiates the transition. That shows it's about control, not just about ideals.
While that massive story is unfolding abroad, we have continued chaos here at home, the Epstein files. They just will not go away.
And they shouldn't. But what's so interesting about the latest round of news is the political spread. It's not just hitting one party anymore.
Right. On one side, we have Hillary Clinton going on the offensive.
She's accusing President Trump of a cover-up
Yeah.
and demanding that certain files be released before her own congressional deposition. She's trying to flip the script on it.
But then on the other side, we have Steve Bannon.
Right. New documents reportedly show that Bannon was in daily contact with Epstein back in 2019. Daily.
And it's not just in the U.S. It's crossing the pond.
Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York. She's now winding down 6 of her companies because the financial scrutiny over her ties to Epstein is becoming too intense.
What I take away from all this is that the Epstein network wasn't a Democratic thing or a Republican thing. It was just an elite thing.
That's it, exactly. It was a structure of access and power. If you had enough money and influence, you were in the club. And now, finally, very slowly, the club is being exposed. It's the slow-motion collapse of a very ugly hidden structure.
Moving east now to Ukraine and Russia.
The war grinds on, but the momentum on the ground has shifted slightly. France 24 is reporting that Ukraine made its fastest territorial gains in 2.5 years.
How much are we talking about?
201 square kilometers in just 5 days.
That's a significant chunk of territory to take back that quickly.
It is. And it changes the leverage at the negotiating table. And there is a negotiating table. Peace talks are reportedly happening in Geneva.
Is there any real hope for a breakthrough?
It's stuck on the status of the Donbass region. It seems like it always comes back to the Donbass. But while the diplomats are talking, the reality on the ground is getting weird. How?
Do you see the story about the hidden Russian arsenal?
The one with the lot of cars?
Yes. A Ukrainian drone pilot finds what they think is a hidden Russian military depot. They're expecting it to be full of tanks or ammunition. They blow the doors off, and what's inside?
A bunch of old Lada sedans and horses.
Like horses.
What year is this? Are we fighting a war in 1917?
It tells you everything you need to know about the state of the Russian supply chain. They are running out of trucks. They're running out of modern tech. When you are hiding horses in a military depot in 2026, your logistics structure has completely collapsed.
That is unbelievable. Okay, one last geopolitical note. The Munich Security Conference.
Awkward is the word I would use to describe it.
What happened? Secretary of State Marco Rubio, representing the Trump administration, went there and essentially scolded Europe in a speech.
Criticized them for inaction on defense spend.
For inaction, for not pulling their weight. And Europe is pushing back hard. They feel the U.S. is trying to dominate the continent's security policy, not collaborate.
So it sounds like a very awkward family dinner party.
Where everyone is smiling for the camera, but they're kicking each other hard under the table. The Atlantic Alliance is definitely straining.
All right. Section 6. Culture and farewell. We have to start by paying our respects. Robert Duvall.
A true legend, passed away at 95.
The Godfather. Apocalypse Now. Lonesome Dove.
He was the absolute master of quiet power. He didn't need to scream to own a scene. He just existed on screen, and you couldn't look away from him. Tom Hagen is one of the greatest characters in cinema history. A masterclass.
And also Jesse Jackson.
Dead at 84. A complicated figure for sure, but an absolute titan of the civil rights movement.
He was there with Dr. King.
He was. And people forget, he ran for president twice, and his 1988 run really created the blueprint for the Obama coalition. He fundamentally changed the structure of American politics.
We'll skip the box office numbers. It looks like Romance is back. Wuthering Heights is making a lot of money. Good for them. But I want to end on our aha moment for today.
Okay.
We spent so much time today talking about artificial intelligence, these $100 billion data centers, the Pentagon's ethical dilemmas.
Very high-tech.
But Singapore, which is one of the most high-tech cities on Earth, is doing something completely different to attract people.
The Anti's Not Algorithms campaign.
I absolutely love this. Explain what it is.
So Singapore wants to boost tourism and maybe nudge up its birth rates a little. They're targeting singles from the U.S., but instead of launching another AI-powered dating app.
Which would be the obvious thing to do.
The obvious thing. Instead, they're employing human matchmakers. They're calling them antis.
So real women who will sit you down and tell you who you should date.
Exactly. Because an algorithm can match your listed interests, but an anti can look you right in the eye and say, he is not good enough for you, or, you need to lower your standards a bit.
It's pure human intuition.
It is. And in a world where we are handing everything over to the machines, our writing, our wars, our driving, it is just so refreshing to see a country make a bet on human wisdom.
Sometimes you don't need a GPU, you just need an ante.
That's it.
I think that is the perfect place to land this very, very packed deep dive. Bring it all together for us. We've covered wormholes and dead zones, lithium wars, and matchmaking antes. What is the synthesis here?
The word that I keep coming back to today is correction.
Correction. How so?
Yeah. I mean, the universe is correcting our math on wormholes, is telling us there are no easy shortcuts. The Earth is correcting its own balance, purging oxygen from the water, shifting magma under the surface. History is correcting the record on figures like Shakespeare and Washington, showing us a more complicated picture. And geopolitics is undergoing this massive, violent correction in South America and Eastern Europe.
It really does feel like the world is snapping back into a new shape.
It does. And so I guess the final question for you, the learner, is, are you watching the surface, or are you looking at the underlying structure? If the skeleton of the universe dictates where entire galaxies can grow, what are the invisible structures dictating your life, your community, your country? Are we building on a solid foundation, or are we all just standing on a magma surge like Santorini, waiting for the ground to move?
That is a heavy thought for a Tuesday, but a very good one. Go look up those Ring of Fire photos from Antarctica. They're absolutely worth the click. Stay curious, keep learning, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.
Enjoying Artificially Informed.
Hit subscribe and share it with a friend.
From the left, the right, and straight from the algorithm.
Thank you.
Welcome to the debate. It is Tuesday, February 17th, 2026.
And if you are looking at the map today, the world doesn't just look like it's changing. It looks like it's vibrating.
That is putting it mildly. We are watching a global order that is being aggressively restructured in real time. I mean, you have the conference halls of Munich, where the mood this week was, well, let's be honest, it was grim. But then you look at the lithium mines in Argentina, where the checks are being written in the billions, literally. And then over to the data centers rising in India.
Restructured is a very, very polite word for what's happening. I'd call it a fracture. We're witnessing the tectonic plates of the old Western order finally slipping. And, usually when plates slip, you get an earthquake that hits the people on the ground first.
And that is the central question we need to tackle today. Are we witnessing a successful, albeit messy, recalibration of diplomatic and economic power? Or, as you seem to imply, are we seeing the chaotic fragmentation of the world into, well, resource wars? I'm the advocate, and I look at the news this week, specifically the breakthrough in Geneva and this massive framework in Argentina, and I see traditional diplomatic structures finding their footing.
And I'm the dissenter. I look at those same headlines and I see denial. Massive denial. I see a Western order celebrating signatures on paper, while the global South is either breaking away or being cannibalized for parts. The Munich Security Conference didn't just happen to be themed under destruction. That was a confession.
Okay, let's get right into it, because I think you're mistaking complexity for chaos. If you look past the noise, diplomacy is actually alive and effective this week. We have high-stakes peace talks convening in Geneva involving the U.S., Russia, and Ukraine. That is not nothing. That is the, adults in the room sitting down.
Sitting down to do what, though?
To negotiate, to stabilize. And it's not just security. Look at the economic integration. The United States and Argentina have just launched a framework instrument for securing supply and mining. We are talking about a $130 billion deal, plus a $20 billion credit line. This is the West not retreating, but re-engaging strategically. We are securing supply chains for lithium, stabilizing energy markets, and mediating conflicts that people said were unsolvable.
You call it engagement, I call it panic. And frankly, I call it extraction. You mentioned that $130 billion deal like it's a charitable donation or a partnership of equals. It's a purchase order for a new Cold War. The West realizes it's losing the board, so it's trying to buy the pieces. And regarding Geneva, the Munich conference proved that the old ideological arguments are dead. The global South, specifically India, isn't waiting for a pat on the head from Washington anymore. They are hosting their own AI summit. The Adani Group is pledging $100 billion for data centers independently. This is an integration. This is the world moving on without waiting for permission.
You're painting a picture of the West scrambling, but let's dig into the security aspect first. Specifically, Geneva. You can't ignore that despite the rhetoric, the US, Russia, and Ukraine are at the table right now addressing the status of the Donbass. And Ukraine isn't arriving empty-handed.
They aren't?
No. In the last 5 days alone, Ukraine has made its fastest battlefield gains in 2.5 years, recapturing 201 square kilometers. That is leverage. That is the system working to create a position from which peace can actually be negotiated.
It is fascinating that you bring up the battlefield gains as leverage, because the reporting from the back room suggests the exact opposite is happening. While the soldiers are fighting for those 201 square kilometers, the diplomatic channels are flashing red. The reports suggest that the U.S., specifically under pressure from the Trump administration, is pushing Kyiv to cede territory. We are talking about potentially the remaining 20% of Donetsk just to get a deal signed. That isn't a peace negotiation based on strength. That is a liquidation sale.
Liquidation sale is, well, it's hyperbolic.
Is it? Secretary of State Marco Rubio seems baffled that people aren't cheering for these peace efforts. But why would they? If you're a Ukrainian looking at a deal that gives away a fifth of your industrial heartland after you just recaptured territory, that looks like capitulation, not diplomacy.
But you have to consider the alternative. We have reports from the UN Human Rights Monitoring Mission showing civilian casualties in Ukraine rose 31% in 2025. The alternative to this liquidation sale, as you call it, is a demographic catastrophe.
The demographics are already a catastrophe.
Exactly. Ukraine is literally passing laws to pay for troops to freeze their reproductive materials, sperm and eggs, because the outlook is so bleak. That is a harrowing detail. The pragmatism in Geneva, even if it involves hard choices about territory like Donetsk, is about stopping the bleeding. It's about recognizing that a frozen conflict, even an ugly one, is better than a total collapse of the state.
It's about freezing the conflict on terms that suit the great powers, not the people living there. But let's follow the money, because that's usually where the stability is actually being bought. You hailed this Argentina deal as a triumph.
Because it is. The framework instrument for securing supply and mining, it's a mouthful, I know, but it's revolutionary.
Revolutionary for whom?
For both sides. This creates a guaranteed price floor for lithium. I mean, think about what that means. The Argentine mining sector has been whiplashed by market fluctuations that are usually dictated by Chinese supply dumps. The U.S. steps in, guarantees a price, and gets the critical minerals it needs for the tech and defense sectors, independent of Chinese supply chains. Argentina gets a massive injection of capital, $130 billion, and a $20 billion credit line. That is infrastructure, its stability, and its strategic alignment.
It's a concession. Look at the social context. You have a situation in Argentina right now where, the economic crisis is so severe that locals are taking out loans just to buy groceries. We're seeing reports that 63% of Argentinians have cut back on essentials.
Which is exactly why they need foreign direct investment.
But at what cost? There are unions striking right now against labor reforms that are likely preconditions for this capital. And crucially, this deal was reportedly made without consulting local mining companies. The U.S. is essentially buying a country's natural resources to box out China, while the people living on top of those resources are swiping credit cards to buy dinner. It's neocolonialism with a green sticker on it.
I think you're ignoring the environmental reality. This framework brings U.S. regulatory standards to the table. These are arguably much higher than what you see in a purely transactional deal with other global competitors. We are building the infrastructure for the green transition. Lithium is the oil of the 21st century. If the West doesn't secure it, we leave the future of the energy transition in the hands of volatility.
But are we actually saving the planet here? Because scientists have just identified the 10th planetary boundary.
Aquatic deoxygenation?
Right. Aquatic deoxygenation. For our listeners who haven't brushed up on their Earth system science lately, this is critical. We are talking about lakes and coastal waters losing oxygen rapidly, largely caused by nutrient runoff and, wait for it, industrial pressure.
It's a concern. Absolutely.
It's more than a concern, it's a paradox. We're rushing to mine lithium in Argentina to save the planet from carbon, while potentially killing the freshwater systems through intensified extraction. You are destroying local ecosystems in South America to fuel electric cars in California and London. That isn't stability. It's just shifting the disaster from the air to the water.
It's a trade-off. Policy is always about trade-offs. But let's look at where this narrative of, Western predation falls apart, and that's in the Global South Zone Agency. You mentioned India earlier. You seem to think the West is just imposing its will everywhere, but look at the AI summit in India.
The one Adani is funding?
The first AI summit in the Global South. And who is there? French President Emmanuel Macron. He is physically present, hailing bilateral ties. This isn't India breaking away. This is the West, specifically France and the US, successfully integrating India into a shared technological future. We are seeing a convergence.
I think you are misreading the room in New Delhi. Macron is there, yes, but he's a guest at India's party. The headline isn't Macron. The headline is the Adani Group pledging $100 billion for data centers by 2035.
$100 billion is a massive number. It's a sovereign wealth fund level of investment from a single conglomerate. That is domestic capital building domestic power. And look at the rhetoric coming out of the BRICS nations right now. You have Russian aides like Nikolai Patrushev explicitly calling for strategic maritime cooperation among BRICS nations to combat what they are terming Western piracy of tankers. They are building a parallel security architecture.
Piracy is a rhetorical flourish from Moscow to distract from the fact that their tankers are being seized for violating sanctions.
It might be rhetoric, but it resonates. And it's not just Russia. Look at the contrast in Africa. Experts are pointing out that U.S. trade policy in Africa is entirely crisis-driven. We only show up when there's a problem or a mineral we need. Meanwhile, China seeks engagement. The U.S. is reactive, the Global South and the East are proactive. Even India seizing those 3 Iran-linked U.S.-sanctioned tankers. Yes, they are enforcing sanctions, but they are also asserting that they are the policemen of their own waters now. They aren't just taking orders.
I would argue that India enforcing U.S. sanctions on Iranian oil tankers is actually proof that the alliance is working. They are enforcing the rules we mutually agreed upon. But let's talk about that enforcement and the Trump factor because it connects all these threads: Geneva, Argentina, and the Middle East.
The Trump factor connects everything, usually by breaking it first.
We are seeing a potential thaw with Venezuela. President Trump is signaling a visit, citing very good ties with the interim president, even while the dynamic with Maduro remains complicated. You might call it chaotic, but even this unconventional, indirect diplomacy is stabilizing oil markets. It's opening doors that were welded shut for years.
It is the definition of chaos. You have Trump slamming a clean energy deal between California and the UK, calling it a misguided deal, while simultaneously courting Venezuela, a petrostate with a contested leadership. It is purely transactional. It's not about values or long-term stability. It's about the deal of the day.
But look at the results.
What results?
The indirect approach, like the talks mediated by Oman regarding Iran, is actually lowering the temperature. Tensions were sky-high with Iran initiating military drills in the Strait of Hormuz, threatening 20% of the world's oil supply. If a transactional, pragmatic deal prevents a hot war in the Persian Gulf, isn't that a moral good in itself? We have U.S. warships, like the USS Abraham Lincoln, in the region. The stakes are incredibly high. If shadow diplomacy prevents those missiles from firing, I will take it over a moral stance that leads to conflict.
But preventing conflict by empowering autocrats is a short-term fix. And it's not just about autocrats abroad. Look at the domestic signal it sends. You have the Pentagon reportedly considering cutting ties with Anthropic, the creators of Claudia II, labeling them a supply chain risk.
Because of ethics codes?
Exactly. Because of disagreements over ethics codes. The U.S. government is picking fights with its own innovators while making deals with foreign strongmen. It suggests a profound confusion about who our friends actually are. And meanwhile, in the background, you have the pressure on Ukraine to capitulate. It's a recalibration towards a world where might makes right. And the little guy, whether it's a Ukrainian refugee or an Argentine worker, gets crushed.
I disagree that the little guy is getting crushed by stability. The little guy gets crushed by war and economic collapse. That $130 billion in Argentina is jobs. The Geneva talks are about stopping the shelling of cities. And regarding the tech sector, the scrutiny on Anthropic or the investments in India shows that the U.S. is finally taking the strategic implications of AI seriously. We aren't just letting the market run wild, we are treating tech as national security. That is a maturation of policy, not confusion.
Maturation? Or protectionism disguised as security? We are seeing the fragmentation of the internet and the global economy. India has its data, the U.S. has its supply chain risks, and China has its firewall. The dream of a globalized, integrated world is dying.
It's evolving, not dying.
I want to go back to the environmental point because it underpins everything. We are talking about economic growth and stability, but we are ignoring the feedback loops. The year of the fire horse is approaching in the Chinese calendar, a year of turbulence. We are seeing extreme weather events like the Arctic air sweeping the UK right now, or the 10th planetary boundary being breached. The geopolitical squabbles over lithium and data centers feel like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic if we aren't addressing the fact that the resource base itself is collapsing.
But that is exactly why the U.S.-Argentina deal is so critical. We cannot address the climate crisis without lithium for batteries. We cannot optimize our energy grids without the AI centers being built in India. You see fragmentation, I see the necessary specialization required to build the infrastructure of the next century. We are moving from a world of vague globalization to a world of specific, high-stakes partnerships. It's harder, it's messier, but it's more real.
Real is one word for it.
And frankly, the fact that the US, Russia, and Ukraine are even in the same room in Geneva suggests that the adults are still trying to steer the ship despite the populist noise.
The adults are trading land for quiet. They are trading ecosystems for batteries. And they are trading human rights for cheap oil. I'm not convinced that these structures are holding up the world. I think they are just scaffolding around a building that's already been condemned. When you have to rely on a shadow diplomacy mediated by Oman and a $130 billion extraction deal to keep the lights on, you aren't in a stable order. You are in a scramble for survival.
I think we have to agree to disagree on the fundamental nature of what we are seeing. You see a scramble, I see a strategy. But let's zoom out as we wrap up.
I think we are entering an era of naked interest. The Munich conference failed because it relied on old ideals that no one believes in anymore. The future isn't going to be defined by who has the best rhetoric about democracy. It is going to be defined by who controls the lithium in Argentina, who controls the data servers in India, and who controls the gas in the Trans-Saharan pipeline that Algeria and Niger just set a date for. I urge our listeners to look at the cost of this transition, not just the GDP figures or the stock prices of Nvidia and Tesla, but the cost to the Argentine worker taking a loan for groceries or the Ukrainian refugee being told their home is now part of a peace deal.
And I would conclude that while the world is indeed messy, the structures are holding. We are not seeing a collapse. We are seeing a hard reset of the global operating system. The fact that $130 billion is flowing in Argentina, the fact that peace tables are set in Geneva, and the fact that the US and India are collaborating on the future of AI, these are proofs that the world still turns to diplomatic and economic frameworks to solve crises. We are not descending into anarchy. We are building a new, perhaps more pragmatic architecture for the 21st century. It is a painful construction process, yes, but the foundation is being laid.
A foundation built on sand and debt, if you ask me.
That is the nature of the debate. Thank you for listening to the debate. We hope this exchange helped illuminate the complex web of geopolitics beneath the headlines.
Keep looking beyond the deals.
Until next time.
That's it for today's Artificially Informed.
Nope. Thanks for spending your time with us.
Yeah.
Stay sharp, stay curious. See you next time.